Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, August 9th. There's a little over 500 albums coming out this week. I got 13 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Like I said in the intro, there's a little over 500 albums coming out this week. I'm only going to talk about 13 on the show, though, today, so if there's something I don't talk about, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing this week. And like always, if you're unable to find any of these in your local brick and mortar stores, I'll put links down below in the comments section. They should all be available online. So the first three releases this week are the first three albums from Linkin Park. These are all one-step pressings from Because Sound Matters. I've never actually listened to a one-step from them. I do have a couple of one-step pressings in my record collection. They're all from Mobile Fidelity. They sound absolutely fantastic. Some of the best sounding albums in my record collection. I'm sure these are going to sound great also. These are all mastered by Levi Seitz. They're pressed to RTI. They're going to be great sounding albums. They are a little pricey though. They're going to run you about $100 each. The first one is their debut album, Hybrid Theory, from 2000. This is limited to 3,000 copies. I think all three of them are limited to 3,000 copies. This was a gigantic album when it was released. It would go on to sell over 12 million copies here in the US. It hit number 2 on the Billboard 200. It was the album that made Linkin Park the huge name that they were. In my opinion, this is probably, maybe not the best, but definitely one of the best debut albums of the 2000s. So you got that coming out, and then you've got their second album, Meteora, also coming out, released in 2003. As much as I love Hybrid Theory, I think Meteora is probably a better album, at least start to finish. I mean, they're both great albums. There's nothing skippable on either one of their first two albums. This album, they took a little bit longer to record. It was like a little over a year that they took to record this. I think that musically it's very similar to Hybrid Theory, but because of the long time they spent in the studio recording this, it's got a little bit more exploration on there. It's a great album, though. It's one that if you haven't listened to in a long time, it's absolutely worth listening to again. It was the band's first number one album on the Billboard 200, go on to sell over 8 million copies here in the U.S. And then the third release is Minutes to Midnight, which came out in 2007. It was their third studio album. This is an album that I didn't listen to for a very long time. It was probably, so this came out in 2007. It was probably maybe 3 or 4 years before I finally got around to listen to this album. And I think because there was such a big gap between what they did on Meteora and Minutes to Midnight, that 4-year gap, I think a lot of people kind of lost interest. And it didn't do as well. It did hit number 1 on the Billboard 200. I don't remember how many copies this one's actually sold. Sold 5 million copies here in the U.S. Musically, it's very different than their first two albums. This is an album where they brought in Rick Rubin. And I think his influence really kind of changed the music on here. Definitely more experimental than their first two albums. So the next album is one I kind of go back and forth on. I'm not really sure if I want to grab a copy of it. We'll see what ends up happening this week. This is Smashing Pumpkins' Rotten Apples Greatest Hits. This came out back in 2001. This is a 2 LP release, 18 tracks. It's going to run you about $38 online. All these tracks are from their first 6 studio albums, plus Pisces Iscariot, which is technically a compilation album. The reason I kind of go back and forth on this is because I already have most of their 90s albums, which I think is the best period of that band. It might be kind of a hot take, but I think the band really kind of suffered once Darcy left the band in 99. I don't know if she left or got fired or what the whole story was. It depends on who you ask, but I love the 90s stuff from this band. I already have most of these albums. I know there's a couple of tracks on here that aren't on those albums. That's kind of why I go back and forth. Maybe I'll grab a copy, maybe I won't. We'll see what happens this week. And then the next release is Logic Ultra 85. This is a new album of his. It's his 9th studio album. It's going to run you about $35 online. I love his earlier stuff. And this is an album that Logic has been teasing since 2017 when Everybody came out. And Everybody was the big album from him. And I guess this is an album I'm definitely going to wait and stream this week because I wasn't a huge fan of his last couple of albums, even though Vinyl Days was okay, College Park was okay. There's nothing really terrible on them, just nothing really stood out to me either. And I know this is an album that's been hyped for 7 years now, so now that we're finally getting this album, I'll wait and see and check it out this week. But I'm looking forward to it. We'll see if I grab a copy of it. The next album is one I know a lot of people have been waiting a very long time for this to get reissued, and some people started receiving copies of this about a week and a half ago, but the official release date is this coming Friday. This is the self-titled debut album from Firehouse. Came out back in 1990. It's going to run you about $33 online. There's two versions of this. There's a light blue version, which it looks like it's completely sold out. And then there's a Smoke and Fire version, which it's going to be the one that's going to be in all your record stores. This is an album that, like I said, it was pressed in 1990 or released in 1990. It was reissued in 1991, but since 1991, this album has not been available. If you want a copy of this or an official pressing of this, it's going to cost you well over $100. It's been bootlegged a bunch of times over the years. I know the most recent pressing was probably maybe 2 years ago that I saw this in record stores. And I know a lot of people picked that one up also, just because they didn't know if this one ever would come out. But this is all newly remastered. The only big difference is that I know of, and I don't have a copy of this reissue, so I don't know this firsthand, but there's a couple people in the Vinyl Den Facebook group that already have their copy of this reissue. And kind of comparing that to the most recent bootleg copy, they actually said that this new reissue, the cover on it, looks a little blurry, which... like I said, a lot of people have been waiting a long time for this album to come out officially, so I'm sure it's not going to really bother a lot of people, but kind of keep that in mind with that reissue that's coming out this week. And then you've also got the new album from 4 Year Strong coming out. This is Analysis Paralysis. It's their 8th studio album. It's going to about $26 online. So this band has been around for a long time. I think it was like 2001 in Massachusetts when these guys started. For longest time, though, they've been lumped in with pop punk bands, which I've never really understood, because listening to their music, I don't really get a pop punk vibe from them. They're definitely I think more like melodic hardcore. So if you're a hard rock fan, a hardcore fan, they're definitely a band worth checking out. I have streamed. I think they've already released maybe 5 or 6 singles off the new album. I've already listened to a good chunk of them. I'm not the biggest fan of them. What's the big album from them? There's Enemy of the World. That's what it was. Enemy of the World came out, and I think it was 2010 when that album came out. It's really the only album of theirs I've ever listened to fully, but the new album is one I'll add to my list to stream and check out this week. There are a couple interesting looking jazz releases coming out this week. The first one was Wayne Shorter, Speak No Evil. So this was recorded in 64 but wasn't released until 66. That's part of the Blue Note 85 series, which is being released to celebrate the 85th anniversary of Blue Note. It's going to run about $32 online. This is on blue vinyl, which is kind of weird when it comes to jazz music to see jazz on blue vinyl, but this is an incredible album. 64 was a really interesting year for Wayne Shorter. So he began the year with Art Blakey. He ended the year with Miles Davis, and then he recorded this absolute masterpiece in between. And this the lineup he has on this album is like a who's who of jazz music in the middle part of the 60s, because he's joined by Freddie Hubbard, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Elvin Jones. A great lineup for an incredible album. If you're a jazz fan and you haven't listened to this album, it's absolutely worth it to at least stream it and check it out. And then you also got Howard McGhee, Maggie's Back in Town. This was released back in 61. It's going to run to you about $30 online. This is part of the Contemporary Records Acoustic Sound series from Acoustic Sounds. It's a very long title, but and they do a bunch of great releases. These are always mastered by Bernie Grumman. They're pressed at QRP. I think they're done at QRP, yeah. Pressed at QRP. These are great releases. I am fully unfamiliar with Howard. I'm unfamiliar with him. I'm unfamiliar with anyone on this album or this album at all. So it's one that I'll definitely stream and check out, because I love jazz music, and Acoustic Sounds always puts out really great releases through this series. I'm not typically as unfamiliar with an artist that I am with this one, but I'll stream and check it out. The next two releases are both albums that I think are probably two of the best albums of the early part of the 2000s in their respected genres. So the first one you got is Nelly Furtado, Whoa Nelly. This is her debut album from 2000. 2 LP release. It's going to run you about $33 online. I'm Like a Bird was the big track off this album. Absolutely blew up this album. Really kind of helped push up the Billboard charts also. It was, I think it spent like 70 weeks on the Billboard charts, hitting I think number 24. Sold, I think, 6 million copies here in the U.S. You couldn't get away from this album when it first came out. And I think this is probably one of the best pop albums of the early part of the 2000s. And like I said, I know everyone knows that one track off of there. Of course, I'm Like a Bird, you still hear all over the place even today. But there's so many other great tracks that are on this album. It's definitely one kind of worth revisiting if you haven't listened to that one in a long time. And then the second one you got is Tim McGraw, Live Like You Were Dying. This was released back in 2004. It was his 8th studio album. It's going to run you about $33 online. So it looks like there's two versions of this. There's a black version of this, and then there's a black and gray version. I'm not really sure if the black and gray version is like a Walmart exclusive or what's going on with this. I know a lot of stores have this listed as a release for this week, but I think most of them look like they're sold out. And then there's another release date for next month. So I don't know if they're doing like a limited release this week, and then it's getting wider release next week. This is all being released for the 20th anniversary of this album. I think it's one of the best country albums of the early part of the 2000s, and I'm not a big country fan at all. But as far as when it comes to country music in the 21st century, this is definitely one of the ones that are up on my list. You also got the new album from Amos Lee coming out this week. This is Transmissions. This is his 11th studio album. It's going to run you about $30 online. There's a black version, and then there's also a translucent sea blue version, which is going to be the indie exclusive. So this is for this album. Amos really wanted to have this really tight, intimate feel for it. So what they did was, I think it was his drummer and I think it was his dad went out and like got all this like repurposed wood from an old chapel in northern New York and built this recording studio. And they went in there and just sat in this tight space and kind of just built all these songs together, kind of like they would in a recording session, in the 60s and 70s. In the 2020s, that's not really how a lot of albums are made or constructed. And I think it's going to have this really intimate feel on this album. And they were able to get all these tracks done in like a week. So it's definitely one I've got on my list to stream and check out. I will say, if you're unfamiliar with Amos, go back and check out all of his other stuff too. A lot of really good stuff he's released in his career. And then the last one on my list is Aha, Time and Again, the ultimate Aha. So this was released back in 2016. It's a greatest hits compilation. 2 LP release, $35. It's going to run you. It's the first time it's ever been released on vinyl. So with this release, when this came out initially, it was on 2 CDs. The first CD was a greatest hits compilation. And then the second CD was all remixes. So I haven't been able to find a track listing for this new release, but since it's on 2 LPs, I'm assuming that all those remixes aren't included on there. Aha, as much as I love their first album, they're probably one of those bands that I'm probably okay just having a greatest hits compilation. I already do have that first album, so I'll probably pass on this one. But if I'm able to grab the CD somewhere, I'll probably grab it on CD, just because I'd like to go back and kind of revisit a lot of those remixes that I haven't heard in a really long time. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing this week. There's a lot of great stuff on here. There's a lot of stuff I've got on my questionable list. A lot of stuff I'll definitely stream and check out again. I'm kind of on the fence about that Smashing Pumpkins album. I'll definitely stream that Logic album. Maybe I'll grab Firehouse. Maybe I'll grab a couple of other ones also. But let me know what you guys are looking forward to grabbing. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.